Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to LCK Summer 2024. I'm Atlas, joined by Wolf here as we hop onto the cast desk after a brief amount of time off, of course. My time off was a little bit longer than yours because I got a day off yesterday. That doesn't mean that there's favoritism going on here. It's just how the scheduling worked out. And just, G-Sun, don't tell anyone about the money that changed hands in the contentious day. But I'm here to tell you that it's not. This is a very one-sided day, Wolf.
There's Degon, he said he's on the same page as us, I think. But look, today we have D+ taking on DRX. That matchup definitely very much so favoring D+. The second match of the evening will be Genji facing off against Kwangdong Freaks. I think that one a little bit closer, but still Genji still hasn't dropped a single game here domestically. Obviously had a rough time out of the hole that they're in right now. On a bit of a loss streak, tough times, swapping Rascal and Frog in the top lane, and still just haven't been able to figure out what's going on the top side of the map. Bottom side, Pleta, Teddy, looking great. They settled on Yehu as their mid lane.
Yep.
So those aspects of the roster are definitely looking pretty good.
And there's some storied matchups between these two teams as well. I mean, Kingin versus Rascal goes back a very long time, and Aiming versus Teddy, a very similar story there, as they have shared time on similar rosters, things like this, and been playing in the LCK for a very long time. Outside of that, definitely some newer faces alongside, but looking forward to seeing how it's going to go here today. I do think that the momentum that D+ have put together should be able to carry them through here against a squad that dropped the game to Nongshim and then cascaded into T1 and Genji as well, which is never going to feel fantastic. They need to turn around the loss streak, as we like to say here in the LCK.
This is going to be a really tough matchup. Rascal is starting today. At least in the first game, he'll be playing against Kingin, who you voted for Player of the Week. I thought it was a very reasonable vote. I wanted to vote for him too. He had a fantastic game against Kwangdong at the end of the week last week, or 2 weeks ago, last week of regular play, and absolute peak form as that's where he was. And so this is not, Rascal is not in his best form right now, so that is going to be a bit of a struggle. And then in terms of the jungle matchup, Lucid really finding his footing here in the LCK, a bit of a rockier spring, but summer he has been super legit. He has been very consistent. Sponge, on the other hand, reliant on those Sejuani Maokai picks and still not finding a ton of success with them just yet. So I think for him, he's going to need a big glow up if he's going to be able to defeat Lucid tonight.
I would agree, and I always like this matchup just because it does remind us of our times in Challenger, DRX and D+. Both of them very, very strong down there, and looking forward to seeing what Sponge is going to be able to do up against a Lucid that really looks like he's hit his stride. And we were hoping that this would happen, right? There are so many players that just don't quite get there, you know? Chronicler hypes them up to all heck, and then they don't quite find the mark. I think Lucid's hitting it. I think he's getting there. Not going to be inviting him out onto the stage first, though. First off, it's going to be DRX, led by Rascal this time around. And on paper, this squad looks fantastic, but they just haven't been able to find it. They haven't been able to find the form, and we'll see whether they can here today.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to Rascal in particular. You know, we've moved away from the Skarner meta. Let's see what he's going to show us. We've seen a little bit more Aatrox, some Camille, going to sneak it in. These are the picks that we've loved to watch Rascal on in the past. Renekton, relevant again, even though it always seems like Frog is playing that champion and not Rascal on this roster. I do feel like that's another pick that he has been great on historically in his career. And, bottom lane, like I said, that's not the issue for DRX. Teddy is getting it done. Pleta, definitely a very strong support. And on the other side of things, you talk about some real top form. Kingin in the top lane, looking fantastic. That sign we had earlier that said Damwon fan since 2020, he said, show me 2020 Damwon again. And this season, we're starting to kind of feel like maybe this team is in that top 3 spot. We've always had the rotation of Hanwha coming in there. We had KT up in the top 3, and it's always been Genji and T1, right? But there's always that third team that's challenging for that spot in the finals, making that playoff run. Maybe this season, it's D+ Kia, because this roster has looked better and better week to week. They have a fantastic record right now as well here in the LCK. They were able to defeat Kwangdong. The momentum is definitely theirs.
Yep. And I think it's going to have to be a little bit different from 2020 Damwon, because it's only Showmaker. He's the only one left. And in fact, Genji has more of 2020 Damwon than D+ does, to be honest. So I'm looking forward to seeing them pave their own way. I was trying to say path too many times there. Key play matchup, going to be Sponge versus Lucid here, and both of them with the same first blood percentage. Heck yeah, look at that.
That's nice to see. You do also love to see Sponge having the highest of all junglers, KP at 14. So making a really big impact for his team. If he's not making the plays, they're not making any plays. You can see the point picks there, the Nidalee he's been picking up. We've been pretty critical of him playing this pick. But it's not often the jungler's responsibility to make sure the Nidalee works. It's often the laners who need to set up the Nidalee for success. And when you're losing topside almost every time, whether it's Rascal or whether it's Frog, it means you can only focus bottom, and then that makes it more matchup dependent. So Sponge hasn't had always the agency. It's not his issue necessarily, but I think maybe move away from that and draft if your team can't win lane. And we are seeing that quite a bit here for DRX of the LCK.
Yep, and it reminds me of Umpty stats. So it's a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
Getting that big old kill participation and a very small win percentage. And it just means that there is a lot on Sponge's shoulders to try and get things going on in the early game. The rest of the team not quite able to find those individual successes. But we'll just have to see whether that is going to remain true, because a week off can actually mean a lot for these squads. A lot of good practice comes in. Everyone is scrimming for the following week, right? So you do have a lot of practice going on. We'll see what has developed here as they all look to try and move on to this patch together. As of course we have had, 4 teams come out and show that, it's basically the same as what we saw in the previous one. But with those slight iterations that we saw come to fruition at EWC. So looking forward to seeing what DK and DRX's takes are on the meta.
We have a different view always of the 26 weeks pregnant, by the way.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. My sister as well, only 2 weeks away from her second son. There you go.
Nice. Congrats to you.
Not meaning to take her thunder. That's yeah, pretty rude of me to say that. But congratulations to Lucy as well, I guess. Yeah.
So that really cool fan sign and situation aside, I wanted to mention just briefly the way that we walk away from this series. I think is one or two ways, right? Because sometimes we get these upset wins in a series, and then the wind is out of the sails for this team. People are like, oh, D+, they beat Kwangdong. Look at Kingan's form.
Yeah.
You drop a game to DRX here, I think there's going to be some doubters. There's going to be some haters. I think that
I think one of them is in the space right now.
I think so. I think for D+, you've got to close this one out with a 2-0 if you want to keep that momentum.
No, I would agree. Let's have a look at what happens here in the draft. As once again, Lee Sin has been banned. Just here in the LCK, I'm pretty sure it's not officially a global ban just yet.
Yeah, just
but some funny business going on with this queue. We're just going to remove the blind man. Not going to see him in today's matches. So Zeri and Ash both taken away here as DRX wanting to make sure that Teddy and Pleta have the best time laning possible. And look, you can't fault them for that game plan.
No, certainly. And the Zeri that Aiming has been finding so much success on, I think, is a smart ban. It's not really meta to ban that on blue side here, but it is a very team-specific ban. The Ash, a strong one. Rumble is gone. Skarner being no longer as relevant does open up a lot on the red side here, so we'll see if they ban both the Corki and Tristana here. It's actually going to be banned by DRX. A very unusual blue side Tristana ban, especially considering the Corki was already gone.
Yeah, and it does show that they do value the Sejuani a little bit higher, but this does give D+ the opportunity to ban that one away if they would like to. Of course, getting Lucid onto something a little bit more attack-oriented makes a lot of sense, but it's one of the first times that we've seen a team go up against D+ and not try to ban out Lucid. It's a very strange situation as Rascal gets the crocodile respect. And you love to see it. The
Vi first pick, I think, is kind of a soft target there of Lucid as well. I mean,
they're like, oh no, we forgot the ban strategy.
And Lucid definitely would have locked it up, I think, if it was given over. But now we can play the Sejuani here, and they could lock something in alongside. It doesn't necessarily have to be an AD mid. The Azir is still quite strong. We've seen that kind of be the go-to. Talia would be a great denial because Talia is so powerful right now. But they're looking at the Kalista instead here for Aiming. And Teddy's found a lot of success on this pick too, so I do think this is a reasonable takeaway.
Yep, Aiming, just a big fan of this champion as well. We saw it work out quite well yesterday in Death's Hands at the same time. I would like the Talia lock-in here. I agree with you. I actually think that DRX have kind of set up their draft really nicely just because Talia isn't a flex anymore. You know, on this patch, she has been they attempted to remove her from in the jungle. Interesting. So Nar is the consideration here, and Rascal going to lock that one away alongside that Taliyah that we saw coming a mile away. And now what does Showmaker play into it? That's the question.
Yeah, that's the big question.
Oh yeah, Diana, of course.
I think he will probably is a very strong pick, even though historically, you know, the Kalista just crushes the matchup. You wouldn't want to think about playing Ezreal with the Kalista face up like this, but Ezreal actually can kind of win these now and outranges the Kalista later on.
Best Renata plays in the LCK over his career, so I do like them prioritizing that, especially like you say, Showmaker with the big champion pool. And another pick to come through as far as the Teddy bands, and Xayah has been one of his favorites. Xayah Rakan making a bit of a resurgence on this particular patch, as there is the Camille taken away from Kingin. Not going to be the answer into the Gnar this time around. And so where do we go? Is it going to be just Aatrox locked in now, and then you save counterpick for Showmaker and he plays something weird, like, I don't know, like Kassadin or the Zillion? What I'm thinking for some reason. I don't know why.
I think that there's a lot of options here. Like, even Ziggs would be okay in this draft.
Ooh.
Has a lot of scaling. GP.
Or just get, yeah, sure. Okay.
Okay. Bringing out the GP, it's been a while. We saw this hovered at EWC, but wasn't actually played. A lot of teams considered it. And has been a pretty good matchup into the Gnar in the past. A lot of additional burst damage, a lot of objective setup, and it's great defensively when you have that Renata as well. So much fail-safe here for D+. When we get to those objectives later on. And the Ziggs is going to get locked here for Teddy, and they're going to play the Ziggs Leona. Such an incredibly powerful duo in the bottom lane. We'll be able to stand up to the Kalista decently well. Difficult to dive this composition with the Satchel Charge with Leona there as well, and you have the Taliyah could join if there is going to be a play made there with Lucid's Sejuani down bottom side. And great follow-up to the engage here, pretty guaranteed. Now, Akali, I was going to say, look, it's perfect as your angle now. You've got the Gangplank, you've got the late game scaling. The Akali, a little bit riskier.
That is a Showmaker pick, though, and this is... I mean, I wouldn't want to play it into Taliyah. I'll tell you that much. That does not sound like a whole lot of fun. Akali does a lot of dashing around, and Taliyah does a whole lot of, I don't want you to dash around. That's my analysis. What do you think, Wolf?
I think that is a pretty good take. The dashing around into the rocks is not ideal. Ziggs can also layer his bombs into your Shroud as well. So, you know, it isn't going to necessarily feel too fun to play this Akali, but if it gets out of control early, you start to get those big advantages. And it is going to be a skirmish-heavy game here that D+, or rather that DRX are playing. Then maybe the Akali just gets so big that you just blow the Ziggs up really quickly. It's very squishy. But, you know, I would have rather seen the Azir. I think that's pretty clear based on what I've been leading into.
Yeah.
Would have given you some more safety into this dive composition, would have given you lane pressure, would have given you the ability to scale with this GP pick later on. The Akali is not necessarily not going to scale, but can feel relatively useless, especially into this composition if it falls behind. And it's a tough matchup into the Taliyah as well.
Yeah, we had, like, of course, we've been through a lot of metas with both Taliyah and Akali in them. We have seen Akali's run away with the matchup before. If they do manage to, like, hit that level 6, find the windows, play when the rocks are down, things like that, there are certainly ways to play around it. And with Sejuani, you get a lot of power because of the melee nature of being Akali. You proc that permafrost a lot. So in the 2v2 in mid and in top lane, they're going to be very, very dangerous. We'll just see how, we'll just have to see where Lucid's going to get to on the map. Let's jump into the rift, game 1. All right, D+ Gear fans out in force, as I haven't seen that Akali skin in a very long time.
Let's see which one it was. Which one is it?
It's the Freezy one, right? Or is that, no, that's just the DRX one.
It's the DRX one, yeah.
And the Freezy skin that I was thinking about is actually an Aurelia skin, so I'm just losing my mind. My brain is just broken.
I thought, you know, an extra day. I did the desk yesterday. We were a little bit unhinged.
Yeah.
But it's kind of, you know, you're on camera less, right? You're speaking less. And you have 2 people talking with you over there. But, you know, I made it through. I thought, okay, well, I got through the tough day. Well, this is going to be fine. But, you know, it's a little rocky.
Yeah, it's a bit rocky, isn't it? And look, I think Valdez had a rough one, right? Because he, like, was basically just back and then had to play by play. But he did have well-rested Chronicler.
True.
So maybe us, no one can save us. Because
the toughest part for Valdez was he had to sit next to me on a plane, 2 planes,
oh,
actually.
no.
So he was...
Also, he just wasn't feeling very well in general.
Yeah.
So it's just a bit of a rough time. So glad you've got a bit of day off there, Valdez. I'm sure you're in chat or something like that.
Grasp, Gangplank with Jack of all trades. Demolish taken as well. So a lot of power in the sides if left alone. It's down here. That's going to whiff.
Yep. Teddy has played the right skin, though, so that is very, very important. Pool Party Ziggs is one of the greatest, and... You know, if you've been playing League of Legends for a very long time, you probably got the skin for free as well, so there's no reason not to play it every single time you play Ziggs.
It's very on theme for the season. See, the earlier levels of it, the Taliyah can kind of chip away and get some advantages there. And the rocks are the big key element. You know, you talked about it in draft. How you want to dash as a Kali is going to be dependent on that cooldown and the placement of the Unraveled Earth, so... Yeah, who's going to have to use that strategically in the lane. But it can be a tough matchup for Taliyah later on, just because the Akali is so mobile and she is so fragile. So not going to want to be building any items against the Akali. Also will weaken her power later on.
Yep, -1's in chat, by the way. Aiming, missing that cannon. So it's kind of, the bottom lane's kind of over. Just a bit of a shame there. Shout-outs to Orcs for his DRX prediction for today. Maybe he just saw it in the stars that aiming was going to miss one of the first cannons of the wave and have a really horrible game. As Yehu and Showmaker here, you can see you play with your health bar quite a lot as the Akali in this matchup.
Yeah, doing a great job of it so far as Rascal's getting pushed in. Lucid's up here.
This is a big dive angle. Rascal down to 300 health, and that is a free demolish proc, and Rascal is zoned away from the wave.
Yeah, there was nothing subtle about this gank, was there?
Yeah.
It's like, you're walking away from the turret, actually. I'm just going to walk straight up to it. There are 2 people in your lane now.
And they're having a great one against Wednesday for such a long time, and hasn't really been seen all that much. As we can see, still works, still does what it says on the tin, and that is beats Gnar in lane. And he has... definitely still doing it.
Certainly is. Showmaker playing with his health bar, like you said. Yehu running low on mana, but does have a cookie in his inventory. He's got a Doran's ring, so he's just going to try to stick around as long as possible. We'll probably see teleports traded there. Keep our eyes on it. We keep looking at this top lane because Kingen has really put the pressure on here. Narbar set for Rascal. Just wants to get this big barrel. We'll back away. And, you know, we've seen this matchup go both ways. We might even get the matchup stat. Like, I remember last time we saw it was almost dead even, the matchup between the two. We've seen so many people love to pick the GP into the Gnar, but it just has gone both ways. And see that Kingen had Lucid come over there, but Rascal dealt with the pressure well, backed off, didn't have to flash or anything, didn't really lose any minions, even in CS, and now has the lane pushing back towards Kingen.
Things not gone too bad, to be perfectly honest. And with the fact that DRX has this composition that does work extraordinarily well as the game goes on, right? You can see like double semi-globals with the Weaver's Wall and the Mega Inferno Bomb. And if they ever are in a team fight, they can control space so beautifully. They have the Vi for the setup alongside the Leona. I mean, this composition, outside of the fact that it lacks physical damage a bit, which is not something we're used to saying all that much with the amount of double 80 carries we've been seeing, Rascal should be able to account for a fair bit of that alongside Sponge. So I do like what this composition does. I do think that D+, if they are able to start snowballing, it's going to roll real fast.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And we have 2 great upfront dragons here, which means a lesser soul, no doubt. But Infernal going to feel amazing for this comp and how it fights out in the early and the mid game. And Showmaker just picks up an Ether Wisp and a Dark Seal, so you know he thinks he's having that kind of game as well. As the Dark Seal is very cost efficient, but it also can stack up your advantages very quickly if you do end up taking some of those early fights. Ether Wisp is going to just be helpful in general in terms of his mobility into this Taliyah matchup.
Well, he's got some friends in lane right now. Just going to throw down that 5-point strike. Has made it to level 6 and is ahead on farm and will actually be even further ahead as he picks up this wave. Sponge going to be taking these grubs. Kellen does get full vision of it. Lucid possibly able to come on over here as Fleta set up. They do have a Gnar in the midst of it, though. Gangplank a little bit later on the rotation, but does have Cannon Barrage up and available. Double grubs going to be taken by DRX. Lucid might be able to get one, but there's a seismic shove onto Kellen. He's going to have to flash to get out of the way. The Ignite now ticking down. That is going to be 3 grubs going over to DRX. Nicely played.
And some plate gold, it looked like going over to aiming potentially if he is able to crash this one in. I don't know how much damage he's actually done to this first plate. Okay, looks like he's going to get it for sure here. It's at half right now. Zig's relatively far away. For D+'s composition, they have to really be leading the tempo. Otherwise, they're walking into so much engage. Kellen having to flash on that last fight, really problematic. You can see DRX have so much CC even without the Vi ultimate.
Wow.
Shoemaker just does not care.
Yeah, Pletter is just not quite able to do anything. As I was a little bit worried that, you know, maybe it's, you know, 2v1 situation here, but Shoemaker, relying on the fact that that Twilight Shroud exists, knows that he can just go invisible at a moment's notice. And he's playing around it very, very well. Currently, DRX, though, do lead the gold by just a wee bit. And the grubs certainly going to be helping out there. You can see in the jungle, Sponge has been able to farm up an extra few camps here over what Lucid's been able to get. As he puts down the water balloons. The skin is so good. It's actually just the greatest. Showmaker's going to stun himself momentarily. You did see that as the rocks come out, you can actually backflip and avoid taking damage if you're fast enough.
Yeah.
Showmaker not quite able to do so in that instance. Does show that Akali does have a few tools against the Talia.
Absolutely. The top side is really under full control by Rascal at the moment. It feels like, you know, and I hate to say this because Rascal has been one of my favorite top laners, you know, at his peak, especially at this time at Gen G.
Oh,
but
yeah.
It's been like one of the first games where Rascal hasn't gotten solo killed, you know, in the first few minutes, right? Like, he's actually having a great lane here into this GP, an unusual matchup we haven't really seen in the LCK in a really long time. It's a classic old one that he has a lot of experience with, but staying on form there, and I think that's really weakened Sejuani's power in this game, the fact that Nara's keeping up with this GP. He did, of course, make that one visit topside, but otherwise hasn't really been able to do much in this game. Was late on the jungle. Teddy, because he zigs now, is just going to be able to clear these waves, and the Kalista time where she's just pushing in hard and is unstoppable is kind of past now. And, you know, the same to be true of you know, what the top lane here was for Kingen, as we mentioned before, is a very quiet game. We're moving into this next dragon, and we'll see what happens here in terms of the fight, because I think if D+ just give this one up or just take it without actually getting any kills here, DRX may be fine with it, especially considering it's not going to be an Infernal Soul, it's not going to be a Hextech Soul, and they're just going to sit back and avoid that early skirmish.
Kingen does have oranges. The little hop does come in. You can actually oranges out of that one, as Kingen's looking to keep himself alive. It does not work, and Sponge going to punch him in the back of the head and grab first blood.
Big win here for Sponge and DRX. A kill going over to this Vi. Just a minute before Dragon comes up here. Kingen does not have teleport. This is very awkward at D+. With, you know, no cross map available, no counterplay. Not going to be able to make anything happen. They get a scuttle in return as Rascal's going to take a plate on top of this. He wasn't the one to get the kill, but he's definitely getting a ton of value. As you've got to respect the engage range here of the Vi. Kingen just a little bit too far up. Really relying on his oranges there, but still too much damage output, and he gets taken out just the same.
That is going to put a bit of a dent into D+ here, because if it's an even game state, that's already not great. But if they fall behind, it's going to feel really rough. Of course, they're going to be spiking a little bit later, right? They want to get the Trinity Force in for Kingen. They want to make sure that aiming is on one item that isn't opportunity. Unfortunately, he's a little bit behind. Aiming has struggled as far as building the right items in the past.
I wasn't going to mention it, but, you know,
yeah, and
I was going to leave that one to Ox, but you got it.
Yeah, maybe it was Ox's opportunity to talk about the opportunity.
Kingen is way up here with no flash.
Does he have more oranges? That is the question, as Pletter's just going to walk towards him. Barrel is going to come on through here as Rascal's throwing the boomerangs down, and yeah, there's a Vi here once again. And Kingen is very, very much going to be dead. Well, it's going to take a while, and then he's going to be dead. There he goes. There he goes. He's dead now.
Teddy gets the kill, and that's a Ziggs in the side. Uncontested aiming will get some plate gold again here, bottom side. But they're going to get a lot of value up here with the Ziggs, and the whole turret will go down. Whenever Teddy decides to satchel it, there it is.
Yeah, barely even needed to be honest, because they were making swift work of that turret.
Yeah.
Aiming is trying to get through this bottom outer, but you can see with all of these grubs being picked up, DRX are just destroying these turrets one after the other. That should be an inner very, very early on. I mean,
yeah,
It is 5 grubs, and that's because they just haven't quite killed the 6th one. There it goes.
Showmaker, if he TPs, he's in trouble too, and they're just going to take this out. Another satchel, double turret, and this is what I was saying. If you're DRX, you're like, okay, you can have the dragon. I'm going to make something else happen. They get complete control of topside, 2 turrets, full plates on the first, of course, no plates on an inner, taken at 12 minutes in the game, and it's Ocean Soul. So you got 2 valuable single dragons as D+ here, which are definitely going to feel nice, but it's not the threat of a tough soul in this game that DRX is really worried about. If you were walking into a Hex Tech, even a Mountain would be better here. You'd feel a little bit rougher about it, but this composition doesn't have great engage, and they haven't been able to take skirmishes as DRX avoiding D+. The power of this
Kill onto Rascal this time around, and aiming almost just oh man, D+ can't catch a break.
They really can't. I mean, they're just coming up empty here. And unfortunately, the Akali has just been invisible this game. Now getting pushed in by a Ziggs, backing off. Yehu's over here in a free lane. No one's contesting him. Teddy's like, I'm looking for another turret. Where's my 3rd one? And you can see the gold lead here is ballooning with the Ziggs. Just like we saw at EWC, this pick is so popular in the LPL as well. And Teddy's getting a lot of value out of this pick while D+ have failed to punish. And plates still haven't fallen here. He's getting more and more money. He's not going to get into satchel range off this wave, but 1 or 2 more, if he's given some additional time here, that turret is just gone. And, you know, Lichbane's done for Showmaker. You had that opportunity. These are not big spikes, though, if you don't actually get to team fight. And they're behind the 8 ball in terms of the macro right now, as this is just a fantastic Gnar here. He has his Gnar bar at 89. See what he else says.
Just throws all 3 of them back.
죽긴 하겠다.
I think I'm going to die.
저는 안 돼?
But he does not.
죽었는데? 까비.
Has a bit of a giggle.
He was hoping that aiming was going to go down as well, but unfortunately for him, he did not.
I think still going to go in the pros column if they were, you know, making a list. Is all right. More satchel range to come through here as the Void Mites come on down. And that is almost the entire outer ring. But inner turret as well as 2 outers already taken here by DRX, and that is going to balloon that gold ever further. And just over 3,000.
If Rascal has a rough laning phase here, if he loses lane to the GP, then none of the plays they've made this game would be possible, but he's controlling it well. They get 6 grubs, so the Ziggs' power is even higher. No Tristana in this game, but the Ziggs could be the next best thing, arguably the better thing even at taking turrets out. They get Herald now as well, so there's just nothing that D+ has no opportunity to take a fight here. In the next 75 seconds, they get set up for a dragon fight, but I feel like the window of getting ahead with this Akali Kalista has been missed. It's definitely a game where if they win a big team fight now on this dragon, they could get right back into it. It's not over by any means, but they don't have great tools because the engage is on DRX's side. And if they get Prio with the mid turret already down, they sit on top of this Leona Vi and say, come at me. I've got a Talia to follow up. I've got Satchel Charge to follow up. I've got big burst damage. And you've got a squishy composition that doesn't have a front line, doesn't have strong engage. D+ are in a little bit of trouble here.
Yeah, and Lucid just hasn't been the proactive player that we've seen him as for quite some time, you know. Hasn't been able to find the angles as Pletter is now going to get hand shook back. There's the Arctic Assault. They get the Permafrost onto the Leona there as well, and normally don't engage onto a Leona, and maybe that is still going to be the case here as Showmaker gets into the Shroud, and my God, the damage from the Gnar is massive, but the answer is still going to be there from DRX, from D+. As Teddy, can he land these water balloons? That's the question. The answer is no, doesn't quite have the arm for it. And DRX, it's an even trade, and I think that that's still fine here for the squad.
Yeah, I think so. Rascal's having a bit of a game, though, isn't he?
Oh, yeah.
he's having an hour of a time, and that was a really nice play from him. Looked rough for the outset of it with DRX having Pleta get caught here. As I said, they don't have great engage. They still have Handshake. They still have a Sejuani ult. And if you're the Leona walking this far up, you are going to eat all of it, but that's exactly what he wants because he's got Aftershock, he's got Eclipse. He pulls so much of the buttons of D+, and then Rascal just has a field day with his Gnar, with his wallop. Showmaker is able to get in there and grab that kill, which is really important here for the side of D+, but things could have gone a lot worse. And And Sponge is like, I'm going to go in for the smite, and the rest of the team is disengaging, so he's just left out to dry. But Showmaker's positioning so good. The Renata being there for handshake setup. They have the Sejuani. It's really tough for DRX to get in there when D+ actually have that formation. I think the Weaver's Wall was very poorly timed from Yehu as well. That was their opportunity to go in while D+ was split or try to isolate Showmaker with Pleta, but they just couldn't find the angle. And Showmaker, yeah, he didn't get any kills in the fight, but just standing near DRX and threatening that flank was enough.
And aiming now at 2 items. Certainly good news for the Callista. It's still, it's lethality. I'm not a huge secure the soul. Point, things like that. Certainly some positives to be picked up for the Callista. It does mean that they don't have a lot of consistent damage in a lot of these fights. It's going to rely on getting that big burst, taking down a single target, and then allowing Showmaker and Kingen to sort of clean up these fights afterwards in the mayhem. Certainly something that these champions can do as barrels come on down. That is a tanky Sejuani, but maybe not tanky enough as the Mega Inferno Bomb comes in. But oh my goodness, the hostile takeover is too powerful. And there's Showmaker with a perfect execution. Not able to quite backflip over the wall though, but still, D+ looking for more. Satchel to try and keep Teddy safe. And it will be able to do so for now. But now we're seeing the power of this D+ comp.
Oh, absolutely. And how good of a game Kellen is playing as well. You mentioned it in the draft, how good he is at Renata. His handshakes have been great, but walking into a choke point against the Renata there was definitely a big no-no. DRX do it anyways, and they pay for it. Big win here for D+. Still behind on gold, but they have Soul Point. The Akali's starting to come online. 5 stacks of Dark Seal for Showmaker. Went indexed into the arm guard as well for extra safety, but doesn't necessarily need it when you're just getting picks here. As Sponge and Pleta trying to clear vision, there's a GP here, he's got the barrel chain stuff. They go in on this, you know? Not the call, not the play. If Kellen is there, you are just going to be fighting each other. You're not going to be fighting any D+ members. This is just a bit of a mistake in terms of the call here. Teddy has to flash. Satchel does allow them to retreat in the follow-up here, as you can see, but he also loses flash on his Zig, so that is a rough one for the side of DRX. They had so much control in this game, but it feels like it's now completely washed away.
I mean, it's true, but Teddy couldn't have played that better, because if you flash at a slightly different time, then you take Showmaker over that wall with you, and maybe he picks up 2 extra kills in that moment. Absolutely. Flash timing, absolutely fantastic there. Still, like you say, everything correct. It is still rough times. He just has a lot of money that he might be able to use to win this game later on. We're having a look at the total gold here. He's 1,000 ahead of aiming, but I'm looking in that mid lane. The 1,000 gold lead for Showmaker's Akali, and this is a champion that Showmaker really has had some extraordinary games on, as Lucid just gets the heck out of dodge, sees them, and then cues over the wall. He wants out of here, as Kingen maybe wanted out of here as well, as he's going to use the oranges. Flash does have the cannon barrage down. They're taking so much damage onto the turret. Kingen takes the first one. Now Rascal's gonna die. It's a double kill for the Gangplank from the grave. Somehow Kellen lands that handshake. I don't know how he does it. Go-Go Gadget hands or something. Oh, figures that one out. But 2 for 1 under that turret for Kingen. That is too good.
I mean, remember the topside dive as well. We have seen some sloppy dives here from DRX onto King, and they were able to get the kill on him in the end, but some miscalculation in terms of getting the kill over on that topside play. In this case, really just not respecting the turret's damage here. As Kingen, he has flash, he has orange, is a very difficult target to dive. Sets up his first barrel onto Pleta, drops down the cannon barrage, and walks down here, maintaining enough distance. So Sponge eating way too much turret damage here. Rascal stuck under the turret while he's trying to look for the wall up there. And it's just a disaster here. Great handshake from Kellen. Speaking of...
Yeah, there's another one. Pleta is going to have to flash, get himself out of the way as the barrel not quite in there, as maybe Kingen's overextended now, but the hostile takeover through the entire choke point. and Rascal can't do it this time. Yeah, who's gonna get knocked up? The Ren should be there, the Pierce certainly is, but the Mega Inferno Bomb is massive, and Teddy picks up a double. Cue the yakety sax, this game is going completely bananas.
It definitely is. At the end of the day, though, Kellen sets up some really big plays there, but the damage of the Ziggs cannot be underestimated. Teddy doing a massive amount with that big ult there, and at least aiming is able to rend before that ends up being a bigger disaster. As we're not done yet.
I mean, this is Ocean Soul. And Showmaker and Lucid, they really want to be able to take that one down, as they knew the control ward was in there. And Teddy clears that one out, and now D+ just wanting to stay around, get a pick, especially if Sponge is coming over to clear out vision or something like that. They pick him off, they get a free Ocean Soul. That feels fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, the Ocean Soul is really good into Ziggs poke as well. So, I mean, this is quite valuable. Again, I mentioned earlier, it's not the greatest soul, but compositionally actually can be quite nice for them. And they do have Yehu returning here. He didn't have Weaver's Wall, didn't have Teleport, but D+ didn't start this immediately, so he actually has enough time to get over here, rotate in on this Talia. Doesn't have Weaver's Wall to split up D+, though, and they have to walk through the phalanx of barrels.
Yeah, and they've got Cannon Barrage and Glacial Prison, and look at this. There is 0 vision available. This dragon is going to belong to D+. They will take that one down with the smite, so there's Ocean Soul. 6 minutes, and we'll have an Elder.
Pletta's gameplay on the Leona in this game has been very much a absorb cooldowns for Sponge to re-engage, but he takes so much damage here, and then again the Renata ultimate comes out. Showmaker's on a great flank angle here. Fate's Call also just ends up being fantastic, but the damage, you know, kind of big. Pretty big Teddy damage there. Everything else though about this was very clean from the side of D+.
The setup of the seismic shove into Mega Inferno Bomb, like that coordination from Teddy and Yehu was really, really nice.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about it in the draft. It's super simple, DRX's comp, and I think when you're an East Side team, that's usually the game plan. That's what we like to see. That's what we champion here at the LCK. On the global side is, look, it might not be as meta, but play it and make it simple. This is very meta and simple. D+ have a bit of a weirder take on the draft, but they're still very explosive. Feels like we're seeing maybe a stronger draft overall, a simpler draft for DRX, but D+'s execution is so much better this game that they've taken what was a big deficit into now a pretty large lead. Yes, they're behind on gold, but they have the Ocean Soul. They have this scaling GP who's got the opportunity finished. His barrels do so much damage, as we saw in those last few exchanges. Showmaker is well and truly, you know, rolling down the hill in terms of his snowballing on this Akali. Was quite quiet in the early game, but now is a big threat. And when you set up the barrel chains and the Renata ultimate on these Dragons, Barons, what maybe we'll see an Elder fight in the next 4.5 minutes here, it's really hard for DRX to get in there. So map control and pushing waves with the Ziggs is so paramount to them being able to set up fights on their terms. The Weaver's Wall they didn't have in that last fight either. So a lot of tools down. Now they have them. See if they can maybe start up a Baron. They're grouped towards the top side of the map.
And you've got Showmaker on the bottom side, does have his teleport up and available. He's just getting this wave pushed in. You can see only one turret taken. Just that bottom outer for D+ is now they're getting Teddy's flash in the mid lane. That is very valuable. I think you will certainly trade a Glacial Prison for that one.
Definitely. It is one of their biggest engage tools, but with how Kellen's been playing, I guess you don't care about the Sejuani ult.
Yeah, maybe.
Handshake's a better ult. And now, just like that, D+ get control of the Baron. They had no control there. They didn't have the turret, and they're able to clear out vision here. Yes, D+ will lose control immediately afterwards, but they're in the vicinity as Leto.
Yeah, Solar Flare just going to be walked out of. Just chose the right direction there, did Kellen. Very nicely done. So Pleta is going to lose a Solar Flare to Narnia. That's okay. Just sometimes you got to fish, and these non-committal ultimates, like the Solar Flare and the Glacial Prison, you can just try and go for opportunistic plays, especially with the amount of opportunities that have been purchased here.
Yeah, exactly.
Even Kingen having one, he's like, don't you mind aiming? I think it's a good item.
I love the Axiom arc follow-up here as well, where he's just like, Kellen's the real carry. Let's just put him in that ult as much as possible.
It works. Kellen's been having a great game. Is now Lucid, possibly overextended. Not going to quite find it here with the Vault Breaker. Did Sponge as the barrels not landing onto Rascal there, but he still has to get out. He's not as tanky as he needs to be if he wants to be taking these barrels.
With TP, I mean, he can just keep pushing here.
Rascal might just be dead. Kellen's coming through, and he really wants to shake his hand. There's the flash, Cannon Barrage. not really doing anything. I don't know whether that was a button that needed to be pressed. You've still got some resets coming in, and like you were saying, Showmaker just being a nuisance in the bottom lane.
Yeah, I mean, he's just putting the pressure on bottom side here. D+, not quite able to catch the Gnar. They haven't really taken that many turrets off of the map, so it's a little bit tough to actually set that one up there, unfortunately. But at the end of the day, though, you could see the power of D+ just sitting in his chokes.
That really hurts. All right, Trial by Fire needs to come through for that big damage, and aiming just says it doesn't need to be there. Hostile takeover, and Rascal, he flashed before. He doesn't have it available now, as Kellen will be punished. But that is a 2-for-1, and yeah, Teddy might be fed, but they're just not fighting where he can do anything about it.
Yeah, he's fighting in chokes only, Pleto.
Oh, okay, Showmaker diving on in. That is the entire kitchen sink down on top of Showmaker, but he'll go into his Shroud, and he might just be okay. The backflip over the wall, the Arctic Assault to do the same thing as Kingen. He is still looming in the brush, but doesn't find the barrel chain there to take down Pleta. So they do lose their jungler, but I think with Kellen going down, D+ don't feel like they can do the Baron.
No, I don't think so. And, you know, they still get huge wins, though, out of these types of plays. There's no vision. Look at the bomb coming out from Teddy as well. They have no vision, so he ults the Baron, assuming they're on it. That's how clueless DRX were in this moment. Spawn has to come in and check. He's looking to maybe go in there and hope for a steal, but then he's just caught out. As you can see, Teddy is doing massive amounts of damage, which is in part why they couldn't end up doing the Baron, even though he used his ult. I guess they didn't have vision of that. It's over here.
Rascal teleported to the bottom lane.
That's not it.
Oh no, that means he's definitely not going to be here for this fight. Let's see whether Teddy can get a Mega Inferno Bomb over. He does have it available, and he is in range, but this is just dead. It's just gone. Went down to 83, but it doesn't seem to matter because there was no one in the pit. D+ have got everything.
Now they can just use the Baron to set up for Elder and do it again. And man, what a rough call for Rascal to TP bottom at a pivotal moment. I mean, they were so grouped to try to deny the Baron moments before, and maybe the idea there was a split call on a team. He just wants to push out bottom to try to contest Elder, but ends up being a disaster because they try to come over there anyways, come up with nothing. Now Teddy's ult is on cooldown. Elder spawns in 15. He will get the ult back up in the longer fight here, but D+ complete control.
And Rascal does have a Gnar in a decent position, and I guess you could argue that Elder is more important, and it absolutely is, as now Pleta with the Eclipse is able to tank up a few of these barrels. The 3-man to come through, and now the Cannon Barrage on top of it. Teddy's the target, but he is able to get himself out of there with that Seraph shield. Showmaker's looking for him, though. There's a 5-point strike, and now the perfect execution. This should be the cleanup for D+. And there is no response from DRX, and I think D+ might just try and push through.
Very clean fight for D+ in the latter half of the game, just playing the map better. DRX had a huge lead, lost all the dragons though, couldn't contest, couldn't break through the barrels as Rascal.
Oh, yeah. I don't think Rascal's going to be surviving this one. Oh, maybe he is, because D+ are distracted by the base.
Yeah, I think they're a little bit more interested in killing the Nexus than killing the Yordle there, as Kellen's going to stop his backs as well. He can't even get home.
Just shaking his hand over and over again. He will get gnawed into the wall and likely loses this 1v1. But maybe the base will die first as Pleta's being ignored at the same time. There is the death for Kellen as Mega Inferno Bomb comes on through, but it is 2 turrets and a deadly owner, and then the Nexus goes down. D+ pick up the win in the end.
You know, it wasn't the cleanest start, and it was a risky draft, but man, the objective control for D+ was fantastic, and also just straight up an amazing game from Kellen. There was so much, I had so much hope for DRX with the lead they had, the control they were showing on the map, how they were avoiding those fights, Rascal's laning phase. We got out of the lane, he had some good Gnar moments as well, but some disastrous dives, and that bottom dive especially really just put the wind out of the sails for DRX, and then they could not break in to those dragons. They lost all their momentum. And D+, unique drafting style here in this one. I wasn't the hugest fan of the Akali, but Showmaker, he got Teddy in the end in that last fight. It was the only one who could do it, and D+ just went in their own way.
And I think when it's Showmaker, you trust him, right? Like, there are certain players that when they lock in Kassadin, you're like, ugh. But with Showmaker, you're like, oh, okay, I see the angle here. Maybe it's like, you know, the final in 2020 or 2021. You know, the Akali, very similar thing. They are for King.
welcome back to the space here for LCK Summer. D Plus go up against DRX 1-0. I'm Degon to break it all down. Alongside me is Ox and Chronicler, and one of us here might have put all their Twitch channel points on DRX winning.
Maybe, you know. Supposedly. You gotta, you know, I feel like you gotta commit. You gotta commit.
At 12 minutes, you're like, I put all of it in there, and
I put it in
feeling real good.
I put it in pre. It was just a vibe, you know. But apparently the vibes were off.
Yeah, you saw Ziggs lock in. Even
No, he actually did it before. It was as we were getting into draft.
I did pre-Ziggs, and then they locked Ziggs, and I'm like, oh, baby.
Every Ziggs ult, he's like, ooh.
Yeah, I wanna highlight the specifically GP here. I think the rest of what DK did made a lot of sense, right? You have Kalista, which I don't think Amy's Kalista is necessarily that great, but Renata, there was once upon a time an era where Kellen was considered at worst like the second best, arguably the best Renata in the LCK. So him getting back on that was really cool. The GP is cool as a counter pick into the Gnar. I think we very clearly saw that if you play GP, you need to play very respectful, because in 1v1 you're quite strong, but you are a sitting duck. And I think that was where a lot of the leads for DRX came from, because GP is so easy to dive, particularly with the amount of side lane roam and lockdown that you have available. But in theory, obviously, it gives you a ton of extra range, and it works really well with dive comp. So when, you know, Akali and Kalista are jumping in, just having the GP ult and the threat of barrels is really strong.
I actually kind of really like the DRX comp, the fact they have this Vitalaya combo we've seen so strong into the Kalista as well. Forced aiming to go the lethality build, because you're not going to be able to freely auto-attack into this. And it's been nerfed. You know, Kalista got some nerfs, but we also saw Opportunity nerfed, which you still end up going. And the Ziggs Leona, this combo has been super popular in the LPL, and you saw really how it could take off in the early game.
Yeah, and shout-outs to Pleta, who multiple times was not engaging on the Sejuani, making that we've seen multiple times other supports do, and they don't have enough damage to get blown up. That led to some early leads. Let's take a look at some of the highlights here. At the top side of the map, early on in this laning phase, this is the diving and the bullying of the GP you're talking about.
What is also cool is that this is actually one of the dreamed Ziggs games that Ox is always talking about. We actually got it here this time around, because this gank happened really nicely done by Sponge. I think his early laning phase was quite strong, or his impact radar, and then two plates come through, and Ox said, you know what would be great here?
Is Ziggs went top. And I love these adaptations. Ziggs is so good at taking these towers. If they're even slightly low, like the tower's 60%, making the move to punish that is such an effective tool, because any other champ in the game cannot compete with the fact that at 3 plates, it's like an empowered auto and a satchel away.
And here, Kingen making a really big mistake while his team is taking Drake on the other side of the map, particularly with GP. Like, you can't be that far up. Yes, you have your oranges, but that's not going to save you if you're greeting for a plate. And then this is where the game felt like DK might actually be in trouble. This is a pretty, like, early to mid-game tempo style composition outside of the GP. So if you start falling behind this far, this early on, it can actually be super detrimental.
Yeah, and we obviously saw D+ going for the tower on the bot side, but, you know, they didn't even manage to get the one tower in the time that those two were taking top. So I think it just kind of shows the value of the Ziggs, and the fact that you can really, especially when you pair it with stuff like Tristana, we didn't see this game, but is super effective at just taking structures across the map. And suddenly, we came out of this where there was a 1.5k gold lead